If you are a car audio enthusiast, I'm sure the idea has come across your mind when shopping for a new vehicle. How easily would I be able to upgrade the audio system? Would this be the right vehicle for the car audio system that I want to achieve? Usually here on this channel, we talk about how to determine the best audio system for your vehicle, but what if we go the other way? How can we consider the best vehicle for our audio system? I'm Mark, welcome to CarAudioFabrication, the channel where together we learn how to master car audio and how to design, build, and install our dream car audio system. Let's discuss. So in my opinion, the first consideration we need to make is the source unit upgradable? In custom car audio, it is critical to have our great sound start at the source. And unfortunately, with a lot of today's newest vehicles, you can't always easily swap out to an aftermarket head unit. We want to take this into account because if an aftermarket head unit is a must-have for you, we might have to consider getting an older used vehicle. With that said though, we shouldn't completely rule out new vehicles because a lot of times we can get an aftermarket interface solution that allows us to have RCA level pre-outs out of the factory system. Now, when you're looking at a new or used vehicle though, how do you really know if there is a solution to install an aftermarket head unit or if an aftermarket preamp solution exists? Well, that's when I would recommend that you guys check out our show sponsor, Crutchfield. On the Crutchfield website, you can enter the year, make, and model of your vehicle, and if they've researched your vehicle, you can see exactly what will fit. This will help you determine exactly what harnesses and fit kit you need to upgrade to an aftermarket radio, and if an aftermarket head unit solution doesn't exist, you can see what is available in terms of an integration kit. To learn more about Crutchfield and get some savings on your next car audio system purchase, check out the links down in the video description. The next consideration we want to make is the cabin geometry of the vehicle and our goals for our audio system. Let's say that we're looking to build a sound quality vehicle. Generally speaking, we're going to want to look for a vehicle that has an interior shape that minimizes reflections around each of the speaker locations. We want to avoid bulky center consoles that can potentially cause response issues. Wider vehicle interiors can generally be advantageous. And if you're looking to pick a vehicle that's going to be a great sound quality platform, it's probably even a good idea to look at what some of the top competitors are currently using and competing with. Now, what about on the subwoofer side? You need to consider what your base goals are, whether those are SPL, sound quality, or a mixture of the two. If you're looking to compete in SPL, generally speaking, I think you're going to want to look for an open air vehicle that has a ton of room. This of course is advantageous for adding more subwoofers, more amplifiers, more electrical upgrades, having room for all of those different components. Now, if you're looking for more of a minor upgrade, if you're doing a sound quality build, or if you're only looking for a minor boost in bass, in that case, you're only going to really have to find a home for potentially one or two subwoofers. But if you are shopping for a vehicle and comparing different vehicle models, I do think it's worth considering the space that those subwoofers would go into. Trunk vehicles like sedans and hatchbacks are pretty self-explanatory. You usually have a pretty simple space that you can install into. SUVs are the same case. Usually they have a large cargo area where you could easily have a smaller or even larger enclosure. But pickup trucks in particular, in my opinion, are the vehicles that can most widely vary. If you have a single cab pickup truck, you're almost always going behind the seat, or maybe you're making a custom center console. But if you have an extended cab, a crew cab, something that has a back seat, usually you're going underneath that back seat. The Ford F-Series trucks are typically known for having a very simple floor, a nice flat floor underneath that seat that's easy to build an enclosure for. But in contrast, one of the hardest vehicles to build an enclosure for is something like the Dodge Ram. The enclosure that you see here on screen would require a ton of custom forming in fiberglass, so that's why you would want to potentially look on Crutchfield and see what is available already as an aftermarket solution. The next consideration for picking a vehicle for our car audio system is the stock speaker locations. Now, obviously we could fabricate speakers to be literally anywhere we want them in the vehicle, so for the sake of discussion, let's assume that you want to keep the speakers that you're installing aftermarket in the stock locations in the vehicle. That way you're not doing a a major fabrication upgrade. So personally, I'd be focused more on the front of the vehicle, and I'd be looking for a vehicle that has a component setup of woofers in the doors and then tweeters up high either in the A-pillars or on the dash. Ideally, if the vehicle has a stock three-way component set where it has room for mid-ranges, that would be ideal as well. If you're considering a build where you're going to add a proper up mixer and you want to incorporate a center channel speaker, you'd of course want to look for a center channel speaker location from the factory stock in that vehicle. Now, this is just my opinion here, but I would actually avoid vehicles that have a ton of extra speakers. Again, my opinion, but I feel like the car manufacturers have learned that most people will evaluate an audio system purely based on the quantity of speakers. The assumption is there's more speakers, so it must sound better. That's not to say that there aren't some great sounding multi-speaker systems out there from manufacturers, but if your goal is to replace all of these speakers anyway, you're just setting yourself up for more headache to have so many different speaker locations. Having many different speaker locations means that you need more channels of DSP control, which is going to drive up the cost of your aftermarket system. It also means that you need to be a much more advanced tuner, and honestly, some of these speaker locations in these vehicles that have like a 20+ speaker system, they're such an odd size that it's really hard to actually find an aftermarket solution that will properly fit without tons of fabrication. Like I mentioned earlier, a great resource for you when you're researching what car to buy and you want to know what size the speakers are, where the locations of the speakers are, is our show sponsor, Crutchfield. The next consideration is availability of electrical upgrades. If you're planning on installing a huge aftermarket car audio system into a vehicle and the factory alternator is far too small, you're going to have a bad time. Unfortunately, car manufacturers will rarely list the actual size of the alternator in the different specs on their website, but I found a great solution to figure out what size the stock alternator is to actually just go on an auto parts website and look up your vehicle like you want to replace the alternator, and usually that will give you an idea of what the factory size is, and it might also give you an idea for what an upgradable off-the-shelf size is. Of course, don't forget that there's also a ton of great aftermarket alternator companies out there that might have a solution and be worth checking out their website and searching for your potential vehicle as well. If you'd like to learn more about some of the math involved to determine how large of an audio system you could potentially build with a specific alternator size, be sure to check out this related video up here. Another consideration for picking a vehicle for our car audio system is how the design of the vehicle affects our installation complexity. As a quick example, let's just talk about running a power wire from the battery into the cabin of the vehicle. Some vehicles nowadays have the battery located in the trunk, which obviously makes this procedure much more simple, as now we only have to just wire over to where the amplifier is located, which is oftentimes in the trunk. But it also might be worth considering that if you're buying an automatic version of a vehicle, it might be worth looking for a vehicle that also has a manual version, as a lot of times that opens up a location on the firewall that you can easily go through with a power wire. Now I know, as long as you're careful, you could obviously always make your own hole in the firewall and use a proper grommet, but again, this is just something that you might want to consider. Maybe do some research on YouTube to see how other people have potentially ran their wires in a vehicle to see how complex it's going to be for you, and if you're willing to undertake that task with picking this vehicle. Another installation complexity thing that I think a lot of times people forget is consider that if you're buying more of a luxurious vehicle, a vehicle that's known for being a luxury brand, a lot of times those vehicles will have more sound treatment from the factory. This is advantageous as the inside of the vehicle is generally going to be more quiet, have less road noise, and give us a better foundation for an aftermarket car audio system. So that's my opinion on the considerations you want to take into account, but I want to hear from you guys. If you're looking to buy a vehicle for your car audio system, what considerations would you recommend? Next time you're researching what car audio gear will fit into a vehicle, don't forget to check out our sponsor, Crutchfield. You guys can learn more and get a special offer at the links down in the video description. A big thanks to them, along with Jerry and the rest of the Patreon membership team, for making these videos possible. And thank you guys for tuning in and watching.